Okay, good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the second episode of Join the Textile Revolutionary Movement. My name is Iri. I'm the founder of Enjoy Vintage Sustainable Fashion, an independent association without strings of funds coming from any corporate, government, or political party. We do believe in transparency and the truth. Therefore, what you will hear today is unfiltered thoughts, checked facts, direct witnessing, and powerful presentation aiming at fighting back unscrupolous fast fashion brands and corrupted governments. So to start with, I have good news and bad news. The good news is that in time of crisis, the global community regroup trying to find the best solution to solve the crisis. And that's what we are doing here with this series of podcasts and events. The bad news is that in the most unfortunate cases, as history teaches us, sometimes when the crisis reaches a different level and becomes out of control, we end up having war, as we know. Now, we don't need to look too far back, as the war has already started and soon will be upon us if we do not act fast. Ironically, this war has been declared by a fancy and glamorous industry, the fashion industry. A war unleashed from the west to the south of the world, countries like Africa and Chile, including Eastern Europe with Bulgaria, Romania, Poland, where the market of fast fashion rubbish is growing fast yearly. So every week they are suffering an armada of ships full of containers with tons of unwanted, unsold, damaged, second-hand garments that we, Westerners, keep sending over with the illusion that by clearing our wardrobes, we are also absolving our guilty conscience as we do buy too much. So we are guilty not only by association, but by actions as well. Feeding the fast fashion industry with this insane demand of more and more cheap garments with a very short life cycle, we are responsible for the ongoing environmental disaster. I'm closing my notes now before I will introduce my friends and supporters. I just want to cite a note from Emil, our friend Emil Pettersen. Circular is not sustainable unless it's reducing overproduction. So today I'm thrilled to host this fantastic parterre of international industry leaders. They are gathering here from all over the world to share solutions, valuable insights, and new upcoming laws, trends, and strategies to help fashion brands and consumers transitioning from polluters to ethical buyers and manufacturers. So before we start with Dr. LeeAnn Teal Rutkovsky, she will lead this pack of eco-warriors. I would like to show you a very short clip, just one minute of this video. It's based on documentary that will show us the damages of fast fashion. So just 1 second, I will upload this clip. Take 1 second.
Fast fashion, produced cheaply, worn briefly, discarded quickly. The pursuit of happiness for trend-conscious teenagers.
Getting something new to wear gives you a little kick, makes you happy.
No buyer's remorse?
With fast fashion, the textile industry has managed to turn a whole generation into fashion junkies.
Customers have become more critical. The industry has reacted, promising recycling as a solution to placate buyers' consciences.
You can quite safely say that these are false pretenses. Recycling clothing into clothing hardly ever happens.
Huge quantities of fast fashion end up in countries like Bulgaria. It's becoming a problem. The last scraps of clothing are burned as fuel by the poor.
We have no money to buy firewood.
The burned textiles pollute the air they breathe.
Many of the clothes contain a significant proportion of elastomers and plastics. It's a smell of sickness.
What about the fast fashion producers' promise of sustainability?
So, yes, good afternoon. I just wanted to show you this very short and powerful clip concerning the fast fashion industry and what it's actually doing. So it's not only the south of the world, it's also in Europe as well. Okay, so without any further ado, I would like to introduce our guest, our panelist. We have Dr. LeeAnn Teal Rutkovsky. She's joining us from the US. We have Loes van Dijk joining us from the Netherlands. We have Betterman Musasia from Kenya, and Emil Pettersen from Sweden. To start with, the first panel, Time to Amend and Repent, will be chaired by Dr. LeeAnn Teal Rutkovsky, and I'm also honored today to launch her ebook. It's fantastic reading about sustainability and circular economy, which is aiming to young kids, but it's also enjoyable. It can be shared easily within the family. It's really a fantastic book. I will share the QR code with you later on, and then you can download the ebook for free. So, Dr. LeeAnn, I'll give you the stage. I'll give you the words. Please remember to switch off your, to turn off your microphone. And then at the end of the podcast, you can join us for a live debate with your question to our panelists. Thank you very much, Dr. LeeAnn.
Thank you so much. That was a wonderful and powerful video. And it definitely sets the stage for this morning, or shall I say afternoon. I'm still having cornflakes here in Boston. It's early. And I want to thank Erie. I want to thank you so much for bringing this group together, because this is just an important discussion to be having. And I cannot thank enough Emil, Loes, and Betterman, three amazing eco-warriors, or beyond that. I don't even think that does it justice. These are people that I am humbled to be part of the group here, that are really making a difference, and they're eliciting true change, and it ain't easy. So basically, I also want to just quickly thank Dr. Miguel Angel Gardetti from Argentina, who is head of he's world renowned in his research and development in the luxury goods sustainable fashion genre, and he inspires me all the time with the work he does. And we've worked on a couple of projects together, and thank you so much, Dr. Gardetti. You're just amazing. I met him in Copenhagen, I think in 2011 at a conference. So beginning here, I will be launching Bo the Handsome Boll Weevil. That is part of the indication of the message that I have to share this morning. But before I do, I thought it would be a wonderful place to start, first and foremost, of actually defining what is fashion, because I don't think we have lost sight. The fashion industry is a broken industry, and people have to start reaching back and thinking about it, I think, a little more in depth. So in this book, which I was a contributing author, and we published this in August, Springer Publications, the actual definition is: the definition of fashion that I refer to differs to that of Coco Chanel. Fashion does not only exist in dresses. Fashion is in the air. It is brought in by the wind. One feels it coming, breathes it in. It is in the sky and on the pavement. It depends on ideas, customs, and happenings. So it's not just about a product, how fast we can get it to the market and getting it on the shelf and then into the dumpster. And ultimately, fashion has turned itself into something that really appeals to, basically it's a cancel culture. It cancels culture. And it does appeal to the low self-esteem of the human being, because with the amount of fashion that is produced on a daily basis, and it's the consumptive part of it, it just leaves little to the imagination as to what that's doing to the global societies. Fashion has always been a little controversial. Before I introduce the book, I just wanted to kind of run through this because I learn a lot from history. I'm a behind the scenes person. I am a geek, and a fashion nerd, I guess, but it is what it is. So, interestingly enough, in the 1700s, late 1600s, early 1700s, women in London were actually killed for wearing cotton, because it was so controversial. Here we go with loose, right? It was the laws of the land. They were the powers that be in Britain were trying to reduce the amount of trade coming in, because calico was the cotton coming from India, and it was far cheaper than what they were selling there in the UK. So women were actually attacked with oil and burned, and it's just it's a gruesome story. But that is what fashion has been involved with through the years. We find ourselves here in the United States. King Cotton was a reason for the Civil War. The cotton gin was created or invented, and it gave great rise to the use of slavery. But at all costs, the fashion industry stops at nothing. So, and it's a human toll that is definitely, what has to go, be realized. So basically, you think you'd learn your lesson. So in the early 1900s here in New York City, there was a fire. It was the Triangle Shirtwaist Fire. It was in a factory here in New York City. And these women who were sewing in a sweatshop were all locked in. Well, somebody put a cigarette out and it went up in flames. Well, the two owners of the factory took the elevator and got out of the building, and most of the women were burned to death. So nothing really happened. Moving on, here we go again for the cost of fashion. And loose is the one that knows best. Fashion is such a self-regulated industry. There are so many things am I bad? Okay, we're moving forward. Wouldn't you think you'd learn? No. Well, the Kentucky Derby became very fashionable. And so it ended up becoming the fact that literally millions of birds were being killed and massacred to put on hats, right? So they were rescued, excuse me, by a group in Massachusetts, the Audubon Society. So they took so you can't always rely on government. The people's voices matter. So that changed everything. That was a game changer for these poor birds. So then we come to the United States, and we have in the period, I call it a very dark period in modern fashion between 1914 and 1718. 2014 and 2017. So what happened was we have, we finally start recognizing the fact that culture is being usurped by these fashion brands, and it's starting to more come to light. So in fashion, we have influencers, and the popular people that can afford the great dresses, the movie stars, they all have a voice. Does it mean that they're smart people with voices? No, they just have a voice. So what happened was the green carpet challenge started, Stella McCartney and Olivia Firth. And these are stories that I think need to be told. They are true stories. And the fact is, this is how we learn, because it's another am I bad moment. Oh, wow. So Olivia Firth starts the green carpet challenge with Stella McCartney. They're, the queens of the green. Well, what happened was Olivia Firth just couldn't get enough of herself. So she starts a fashion line, eco fashion line with Marks and Spencer. Now, mind you, she now has a consulting firm. Excuse me, I don't know what's going on. She has a consulting firm for sustainable fashion. So to get to the bottom line, at the time that she has launched her line with Marks and Spencer, there's a problem in Syria. And all of these children were left homeless. They're refugees, orphans. So they were put on trains to Turkey. Well, wouldn't you know that a lot of these children were showing up in sweatshops in Turkey, and who would they be selling for? Marks and Spencer. Who has a fashion line? Olivia Firth. And she represents the green movement. And she is the first one to say that she has objectified now her husband, who is a movie star. And she said she has no problem using her husband for a voice. Well, don't use your brains. Don't use your common sense. Use your husband.
That's tragic.
So this is what the fashion industry is about. So now we have the movie stars on the green carpet with Stella McCartney. This is going to get better. But then I promise I'll go to the book. So, this is how we learn. So what happens, Stella McCartney and Patagonia, the two golden children of sustainability, right? We know Stella McCartney, you say Stella, you say gold, green gold. You say Patagonia, you say green gold. So at the same time, they were both using the same wool supplier in South America. At the same time, it was discovered that they were stripping the flesh off of the sheep while they were still alive to get a better result for the wool. Well, nobody would have known this if somebody didn't come and blow the whistle. Did anything happen? Nothing happened. Oh, am I bad? Oh, well, never. How many here listening has even heard of that? So welcome to the fashion industry. So then we fast forward. I mean, I could get going more, but I'm going to try to stop. Somebody has to stop me. But
we have 4 minutes left, LeeAnn.
Okay. So this is the story. I want you to really understand that there's a method to the madness here. And then we go and we have the fast fashion. We have Shein literally producing orders, 1 million orders a day, not a week, a month. In one day, they ship 1 million orders. And that isn't just one order. Okay, so here we are. this is the second book that I have actually worked in producing or co-authoring this year. And this is about, it's in South America, but the idea is about decolonizing fashion. So we have Livia Firth, we have all of these hot shots, right? We would love for them to be doing good things, but they're not. They're using their status for self-gain, and it's not. And they know that the fashion industry is a perfect launch pad for it because they actually pander to people with low self-esteem. So the book, this is Bo. There he is. He's so handsome, and I have one of his polka dot bow ties on today. So this talks about, it's actually a great segue. I started thinking about solutions. That's what we're here today about, solutions. This is a solution. So the children start to learn the real truth at a young age, sharing it with their parents. So then they would get to be our age, they're going to see the skunks in the grass. They're going to know. So this book is a very important book. 60 million if you're using ILO or Oxfam for statistics, or 75 million women and children, mostly in the fashion industry. I want 1 million downloads. I've done this book for free, excuse me, to get it in the hands of 1 million downloads. Because when you think about it, that's only 1% of the 60 million. So I have to get this done. And it's a wonderful book. I did all the illustrations. I'm a control freak. Rather than have somebody else do it, I did it. Then I could make him cute if I wanted to. And if I wanted to change his bow tie, I would. So I think it's a great thing because you see, it shows the growth of good stuff, bad stuff, and all of that. So somebody better shut me up because I'll be going for another day.
No, I just wanted to say that I read the book and I'm honored that Dr. LeeAnn today, she chose my platform to launch her book today. It's a wonderful book. I can guarantee you the drawings are beautiful, engaging. The story is never boring. It really leads you to the life of, I mean, this bug is a storyteller and he's telling you how to become, the concept is explaining the concept of circular economy. So I want to thank you, Dr. LeeAnn. I apologize, I didn't make a proper introduction at the beginning. I was so excited when the podcast started. Dr. LeeAnn, actually, she's a best-selling author, a global campaigner, an advocate to the sustainable fashion industry, international advisory board member to India, Africa, Hungary. She's also, you know, she's an amazing personality. So thank you very much, Dr. LeeAnn, for being here. I know you woke up quite early in the US to give your witnessing here today. So thank you very much, honestly. Thank you. So thank you. Thank you. The second, of course, Dr. LeeAnn and all the other panelists are available for you at the end of the podcast for any question, if you have any question. The second panel is a slap on the face, and it's chaired by Betterman Musasia. He's joining us from Kenya. Betterman is a veteran campaigner. He's the founder and CEO of Clean Up Kenya, an association aiming at cleaning up the toxic textile supplies shipped every week to Kenya. He's the face and voice of all the Kenyans fighting this never-ending battle and mentoring young kids and future generation, claiming back the destiny of their own country. So welcome, Betterman. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that glowing introduction. Yes, my name is Betterman Simidi, and I'm now the founder and patron of Clean Up Kenya. In 2015, about 8 years ago, I just became sick and tired of seeing all the trash in the Kenyan neighborhoods, at the rivers, at the streets, and also hearing the fake promise from government officials that they are going to do something about it. So I did something that many people would not do. I sold my truck business, and I invested the money into starting Clean Up Kenya, set up an office, hired some young people to set up the organization. And so, long story short, 8 years later, we have become a leading voice on issues of public sanitation in the country. And so we do a lot of cleanups all over the country, but also we do advocacy, issue-based advocacy. Mostly we want to do the public-facing advocacy work. That is using social media. We do researches, collaborate with others to be able to do these things. And so we have previously run aggressive advocacy campaigns against the plastic lobby. Since 2017 there, we participated into the lead up to the ban of the plastic carrier bags in the country, which has seen a lot of changes in how the environment looks. Shortly after that, we also started a campaign against the plastic bottles, which has also led to some policy interventions. We now see that Kenya has developed an EPR, is implementing an EPR regime in the country. And so about 3 years ago, we started thinking about the impact of clothing on the Kenyan environment. And we have been lucky to collaborate with Changing Markets Foundation, which is based in the UK, to do some of the advocacy work, especially on plastic. So this time we worked with them on textiles, and we wanted to investigate, investigate the textiles specifically from Europe that comes to Africa and Kenya, the impact they have on the environment, on society. And so since in 2022, we carefully designed, research to be able to unmask the impact of second-hand clothing coming from the EU and the UK onto Kenya. And the key findings of this research, which was released a report and also a documentary. One of the key findings is that up to 50% of the clothing that comes to Kenya from the EU and the UK are essentially rubbish. They are waste. And for different reasons, of course. We found that some of the clothes, they are climate inappropriate. We found some clothing, they are soiled, torn, to be reused. We also found some of the clothing are culturally inappropriate. For example, you find mini skirts, very tiny mini skirts that not so many. Of course, there are some Kenyans who would wear them, but not so many people are wearing this. We also found skiing shoes in the belts of shoes and so forth. So all this clothing that are coming into Kenya, they're having a real impact on the environment. We documented Nairobi River, the impact on Nairobi River. And if you were able to see the documentary, you saw the visuals. We also documented the impact on the landfill, the main landfill in Nairobi. We also saw, how this clothing, when they end up on the landfill, they are incinerated there, the impact it has on the air, and the pollution, and so forth. So basically, since they released the report, we have seen a lot of conversation around the issue of fashion on the planet. Just recently, last month, we saw the European Union, specifically Denmark, Sweden, and can't remember, I think Finland. We saw the ministers for those countries proposing to do more policy interventions on how we trade in second-hand clothing globally. Of course, before that, we were able to host the minister for Sweden here in Nairobi. We took her to Nairobi River so that she can be able to see the impact. And just a few days later, they were able to make this. So in short, fashion is having a real impact on the planet, and especially the countries in the global south, because we have this trade, the second-hand clothing trade, the way it's structured. We think it needs to be reformed. There is a lot of clothing that are coming to not just Kenya, but many countries in the global south, and where this clothing ending up. So if we have overproduction and overconsumption in Europe, we are also having a lot of clothing coming to Kenya. Just to put this into perspective, in the last 6 years, Kenya, which has only a population of 50 million, has imported 1 billion kilograms of clothing, of second-hand clothing, 1 billion kilograms. That's a lot of something. It's a lot of clothing. So, sorry?
Sorry, Betterman.
And so it's not just go ahead.
So no, go ahead. I just wanted to ask you one question. Which are the solutions? What solution would you suggest? Because you live there, you know exactly what you're talking about. What are the solutions? I mean, that will help to stop this awful trend.
Yeah, that's what I was getting to now. And I think that's where we'll conclude with. In the Fashion report, we made a few recommendations. The first recommendation that we made is that okay, we are not against the trade of second-hand clothing as a lobby, because we think second-hand clothing can be part of the circular economy. So the first recommendation that we made in fashion is that we need quality control. We need to improve the quality of clothing that are sent into the other countries as second-hand clothing. In fact, I just did an article sometime last month where I said that the way that system is structured, it's all, you could also see neocolonialism in it, because when clothing, they are donated by people around the world in Europe, they don't intend that those pieces of cloth will become subjects of discrimination in a sorting hub. Because what is happening is that when those clothing, they go to a sorting hub, they are sorted into first grade and second grade, even third grade. So we are seeing that the first grade is resold in Europe, and the second grade and the third grade is the ones that are sent to the poor countries. So we think, that system needs to be collapsed. And that's why we are seeing a lot of clothing, up to 50%, being sent to countries like Kenya. So that is the first recommendation, and that is just in the medium term. It won't, of course, solve the problem of overconsumption and overproduction, but that can be part of the solution. And then, secondly, we have proposed to build a global and extended producer responsibility system for clothing. And in this system, we are happy that we are seeing that Europe is leading in this area to develop this system. But what we are saying with this system, the money, the fees that the brands and those involved in the trade of clothing are paying into this system, we are saying that this money should follow the clothing, because from the conversation that I've had with policymakers in Europe, it looks like they are not interested in this. And so as an NGO, we need to try, and people who are advocates in this area, we need to try to push the policymakers. If they are going to send second-hand clothing from Germany or Poland or wherever to Kenya, the fees that were paid to manage the end of life of those clothing, they need to follow the clothing, because poor countries are managing the end of life of all fashion as it is right now, putting stress on their fragile economies and having to spend money to manage the landfills, the waste collection, and so forth. And so that's why you see there is a lot of environmental damage on our marine bodies. Because like a country like Kenya, we only spend about 2% of our annual budget on waste management, which is very little. It's very little, because there's so many other things we have to worry about. And so those are the two recommendations that we are making to be able to solve some of these problems. I think I'll end there, and I'll be available for answering questions later.
Thank you, Betterman. That was a very powerful presentation and witnessing, because I will also object many companies in a second-hand business, and they claim it's good to send their second-hand garments, which most of the time they are damaged, they are unsold, or they are not recyclable at all because they are made of plastic and other toxic material, and they claim it's good to send it over. So I think we need to stop. Also, we need to be careful with the second-hand, because there are good and bad players. And also maybe it's time for Kenya and all these other countries to push back, which means when these ships arrive, just send them back. Do not accept this burden. Thank you very much, Betterman. So Betterman is available for further questions at the end of the podcast. And now I'm actually thrilled to announce the third panel, which is Designing a New Textile World, which will be chaired by our friend Loes van Dijk, She's a brilliant climate litigation lawyer. She's based between the Netherlands and the UK. She's the founder of Climate Court, and she's an expert in climate court litigation. She's a climate change journalist, expert in ECG litigation, practicing climate justice and corporate law. So thank you, Luz, for being here today. So I will leave you the stage.
Right. Thank you so much, Yuri. And thanks everyone else for joining today. It's really nice to see. I was there for the first panel as well, first podcast. And it's nice to see other people, same people as well. So as Yuri mentioned, I have a background in corporate law. That's how I started my legal career. But straight out of university, I went into human rights and climate law. So I was very, very close to going to the dark side, but I escaped in time. I work with laws across different industries, so not only the fashion industry, but for me it's one of the most interesting ones because it's one of the most polluting industries with the least amount of regulation. So you may notice in my discussion as well that I have a little bit of a hate-love relationship with my topic because I am a huge nerd for climate law, sustainability law, but I'm also not very appreciative of some of the laws that we do have. I don't have a lot of nice things to say about them because it's nice that we have them, but none of them are really great. So as the previous two speakers managed to show really clearly, environmental impact of fashion is really a pressing concern because it is affecting the daily lives of people. And at the moment, there's a wide range of regulations that apply to fashion and how we can make it more sustainable, environmentally friendly. But I would like to distinguish today between two different stages. So what happens before I start wearing this t-shirt, for example, so the creation, the shipping, everything before I buy this. And then the second stage, which is more what Betterman just discussed, is what happens after I get rid of it. If I no longer want it, does it cause waste? Is it going to be something that's going to be recycled? Anything of that sort. But I'm focusing on the first stage today. So the waste stage is really interesting and it should be easier to regulate, in my opinion. Not that they're doing it successfully yet, but it's really that first stage that's really difficult for regulation. And I'll explain why later on. So it's actually really interesting because I'm going to talk about something that we didn't really coordinate apart from our basic outlines, what we're discussing today, but it's actually really is very similar to what Dr. LeeAnn and Betterman just discussed. So I'm going to talk about the extraterritoriality of laws and how that affects the fashion industry, or should affect the fashion industry across the world. And before I jump in, I want to make sure that the concept of extraterritoriality is clear, because it's quite a difficult concept, but I hope I can break it down. And if it's not clear, just interrupt me at any point. So if a country, any country, puts a law in place, then traditionally that law will only apply within the borders of that country. So this is the very nature of legal systems across the world. So if the Netherlands, for example, where I'm at, implements any kind of law, it will apply to the Netherlands, and it's not even allowed to apply to any other country. And this is the idea of state sovereignty. So you're not allowed to interfere with other countries' laws. And that's also why we're struggling so much to regulate the fashion industry, because corporations are really well aware of this and they can keep ducking new laws by just moving to a different country. But pollution, for example, and global supply chain, they're the complete opposite, because as opposed to our legal systems, pollution doesn't limit itself to one border. It doesn't discriminate, and it can affect an entire ecosystem or an entire community, for example. So one way around this would be the concept of extraterritoriality, which means that a country can apply its own laws beyond its own borders. So think of it as if you're extending the reach of one country's legal system. And this doesn't have to be very explicit. It doesn't have to say, you know, this law will affect this country, this country, this industry, whatever. But it can be a very indirect effect of that law. So I'll give some more examples later on. I think that will be clearer. So if you look at extraterritoriality in sustainable fashion law, for example, you can hold a company accountable for its entire supply chain, regardless of where those practices are occurring. So it doesn't matter where those chains in the supply chain are. Simply by regulating the company in one jurisdiction will affect all of these different companies, suppliers, down to the smallest levels. So if you look at a fashion brand that is headquartered in country A, just an example, and that company, that brand is sourcing materials from factories in country B, and country B might have very lax or weak environmental regulations, then that might cause those factories to be dumping chemicals or using excessive amounts of water, causing very serious pollution in their local environment. So without extraterritorial environmental laws, country A, so the one where the fashion brand is headquartered, they might not be able to hold the fashion brand accountable for the environmental damage caused by its overseas suppliers. And that's why using extraterritorial environmental laws can be really a game changer, I think. But if things were so easy, that's the way I'm describing it, it's very theoretical. If things were so easy, we wouldn't be here today discussing all of this, because things would be a lot better. Because extraterritoriality, as good as it sounds, it also has one major concern that I would like to raise, and that is a concept. It's called climate colonialism. And this is a very new term. Betterman mentioned it earlier as well. And I've yet to see it be applied to legislative efforts, apart from what I'm doing. But I think, in essence, climate colonialism can imply the failure of the global north to financially support the global south, for example, in fighting climate change, or the exploitation of the global south's resources to further the global north's climate agendas. But I think that you can extend this concept to climate colonialism also being the imposition of unwanted laws on countries just because the global north messed the planet up so badly. And I think that this is something that we also should be staying away from very much. Because if countries in the global north are imposing environmental regulations that have an effect in other countries too, then these regulations will be affecting the sovereignty of those other countries. Or they're overstepping their boundaries, basically. They're overstepping their own borders. And this can have a lot of effects, but one of the effects is that it might harm the economic growth of countries in the global south. So I'll give an example of a law that potentially has that effect shortly, that's already being discussed. But stricter environmental regulations will make it more difficult for countries in the global south to compete in a global market. And this, in the longer term, has the effect that it's exacerbating existing inequalities. So the example that I mentioned is, for example, the European Union deforestation regulation. I don't know if anyone's already heard of it. It's not fully, it does affect the fashion industry to a certain extent, not as much as some other industries. And this is a new EU law that already is in effect, but it will get more effective over time, I think, as of December of this year. So what this regulation says is that any product that is imported to the EU has to meet certain criteria to make sure that this product or components of the product did not lead to deforestation anywhere else in the world. So if you want a very practical example for the fashion industry, for example, you can think a farmer, for example, that is growing cattle on their lands, and in order to grow that land, he's cutting the forest down. And then in turn, that cow's skin that's living on that land is used for leather products in the fashion industry. So you go all the way to the smallest player in that supply chain, that leather that's created from that cow, and that cow had to graze on the land, and the land used to be forest. And that's why it's affected by that regulation. So it's a very detailed one. And in theory, it sounds really good. But what's been happening now is that it's shown that there are really big shortcomings to the law, because it means that large companies that are based in the EU will need to show that all of these suppliers, so small farmer as well, complies with that requirement, not to cause any deforestation in creation of the products. But these requirements are so complex that these small farmers cannot really gather the data that's needed, because it's not just saying I didn't cause any deforestation, but they have to actually prove it with data. And a lot of these small farmers, they don't even have any of the facilities that they need to show that. So what are these European companies doing? They're just going to move on towards the next farmer, towards a bigger farmer that does have these facilities in place. And this way, the smaller farmers are just being priced out of the market completely. So that's my issue with extraterritoriality. And it can be very helpful, but it can also be very harmful if it's not applied correctly. So in my view, we need laws that do two things. Obviously, they need to be strong enough to address the fashion industry and the fashion industry's huge environmental impact. But at the same time, they shouldn't disadvantage countries in the global south or create what I call a new form of climate colonialism by disadvantaging these countries. And in my opinion, we have no such regulations at all at the moment. There's nothing that does those two things at the same time. We have a couple that achieve the first one, sort of achieve the first one, but there's no regulation out there that manages to regulate the fashion industry without putting other countries at a disadvantage. So it's very difficult to solve, I think. Others have been mentioning solutions. So my solution to what I've been discussing would be that we need much more international collaboration on the topic, like what we're doing right now. We need much more collaboration among stakeholders, and that has to include countries in the global south. If you are the EU and you're drafting this regulation, you need to include other countries, and you need to include people and farmers who can explain these effects to you and who can explain why it won't work as you think it might work. And other solutions might include offering grants or loans to small farmers to help them invest in more sustainable methods and infrastructure upgrades. But that, again, that has to come from countries. You cannot expect these multinational companies to do that. As much as I would like for them to be obliged to do things like that, you cannot expect that they'll go along with that and that they'll agree to that. So financial support has to come from countries to make sure that countries in the global south can keep up. And any regulation that you come up with has to avoid imposing those disproportionate economic burdens on not just on farmers, but companies in the global south or entire countries, because it hinders the sustainable development, and it's only creating a larger gap of inequality between different countries and different communities. And I think the last thing that you want is that the regulation that you're creating or the regulation that you're imposing on not just on your own country, but that has an effect on other countries, as I've just explained. The last thing that you want is that farmers are being priced out of the market. You want to make sure that they're included in that conversation and that they're included in how you can do things better and how you can do, not necessarily better, but more sustainable. And I would say, but I might be a little bit too harsh there on, I mean, I don't think you can be too harsh on the multinational companies, but it's a bit more unrealistic, I would call it. I would penalize them for dumping small farmers. I would make sure that if they are trying to meet their obligations under a specific law by just putting other people out on the street, I would put a financial or an administrative burden on that. They can do it, but then they'll be fined for it, something like that. So that would be my solution. So I think we have a lot of opportunities and challenges with law. I think there's definitely a need for more collaboration and also more, I think we need more knowledge in the sustainable legal industry and more people that aren't necessarily lawyers or legal thinkers, but people that have knowledge about business, entrepreneurship, about countries, about politics, about social aspects of doing business in creating these laws. And currently that's not really happening. And I think that the EU deforestation regulation is a great example of that, because you can see exactly play out in real time how it's not working at the moment and how harmful it can be, because it's actually happening that these farmers are being just put out on the street because they're not able to provide the data that's needed. So I think that my key takeaway would be that we need more collaboration, and that's a very easy thing to say. And you would think that it would already be happening, but it's not really the case. So thank you so much. I think that's all I had. Yes.
Thank you, Loes. As always, Loes has the power of grabbing the attention of everyone with their insights and really great solutions. And I think the solution that you just mentioned, it will help actually the local communities to grow and flourish. Because right now, I mean, this is also the other issue. We need to let local community not to be absorbed by this big corporation with this false idea of this false economy. So yeah, great insight. Thank you very much, Loes. And now we are saving the best for the last, for best one for last. And I'm really happy to introduce our friend Emil Pettersen, who is joining us from Sweden. He will chair the fourth and final panel, which is Children of the Revolution. Emil is an eco-entrepreneur. He's a visionary leader, the founder of Reperel, a Scandinavian clean tech company which is dedicated to transforming waste streams into garments and supplying requests from all over the world. So Emil will be sharing his case study, experience, and what it takes to become an eco-entrepreneur. He's also a very popular speaker and podcaster, and recently he has been hosted at the Bay in Con Podden. So I will share with you the link of the podcast as well. Thank you, Emil. I will leave you the stage. Thank you.
What a nice introduction. Thank you so much for inviting me, and what an honor to be in the same lineup as Betterman and LeeAnn and Loes. Really interesting people, and listening to their presentations is probably the best introduction to my story that I've ever been a part of, because you have LeeAnn with the history view, you have Betterman with some of the problems today which you try to fight on a local scale, and then you have Loes' perspective on how legal arguments and collaboration between countries are both good and bad, which leads to my presentation of how can doing the best you can do today and then try to do it even better tomorrow, and how can small-scale businesses with local engagement be a part of the solution. First of all, it's very important to say that actually I don't know anything about textiles, or I don't know anything about fashion. I'm not even particularly interested in fashion. I kind of ended up in the textile industry by a coincidence. I've been spending 20 years of my grown-up life after I did my master's thesis on corporate social responsibility on making good IT systems for smart cities. I'm super knowledgeable in designing a really good system for public transportation in a medium-sized to large European city. What happens was that 7 years ago, I was offered this job as a CEO in a textile company. I had the background as a leader. I had a background as a businessman, and all or a lot of engaged mid-aged men would very much like to become the CEO. one time in their life. So I thought, well, textile, that sounds fun. I'll get the title and then I'll always learn about the business. I got the job, took over a company making corporate suits. It took me less than a week to realize that the textile industry is probably the least inventional business I've ever been to. I mean, coming from the IT industry, working in the Scandinavian countries, you have to reinvent yourself every day. You have to improve what you are doing every day. Otherwise, your job will be shipped off to a low-cost country. But in the textile industry, with my first trip to Turkey, I realized that a sewing room in Istanbul looks exactly like a sewing room in Sweden and Borås did 100 years ago. It's not a color on the machine, but it's pretty much the same. The focus on price for the working for the seamstresses made the company not having to pay attention to spill of fabric, wrong production and stuff, because everything was based on the hourly wage for the seamstresses. I suddenly found myself in an industry where nobody were looking for better material, nobody were looking for anything improvement. This was 2015. A lot have been done since that, I might add, but there is still a problem. So I asked my production manager for this really big suit production we had, go out and find me at least a recycled material for this. It took him 3 weeks, 3 days, because this fabric that I wanted was actually existing in the market. Nobody had just asked for it or put it into industrial production, which learned me a couple of things. The most important lesson I got was there is a lot of invention being done on a micro perspective. There is a lot of nice things being done, but the main problem is helping them commercializing it. I mean, putting it into production. If it's more expensive, well, you have to find ways of marketing this in a way that makes it possible for you to work with more expensive material or more expensive production, or whatever. I went from this suit, 2015, we made this suit. We won a prize 2016 in Düsseldorf for the most sustainable product that year. It was a blended fabric, 40% recycled PET and 60% wool. If you ask me today if I would work with PET, I would obviously say no, I won't. But the most important thing here is that was what was rocket science at that time. And I think that a lot of the middle steps we have to make on our way to progress is often lost in discussion or quarreling between different groups of the sustainable fashion or textile movement. I normally start all my presentation and say that I don't want to have any trouble with anyone. I believe that sustainability is a group effort, and all the people who can bring something to the table, together we are making the world a better place. From that suit, it became a huge commercial success for my employer. It was such a commercial success that my employer didn't want to develop further. I mean, they were happy with this big selling product and the sustainable label that the company got, and I had to let that company go a couple of years after because I wanted to keep on developing. I went with one of my employers before I started Reparel. We went to China to buy the fabric. We shipped the fabric to Dhaka. We made the garments making in Dhaka, and then we shipped it to Scandinavia or Europe, which was one of the journeys where same ammo, everything as cheap as possible, and it was actually cheaper to overproduce with 30% and then burn the overproduction than risking having a hole in the size ladder. And that also was a very contributing part to me starting Reparel. And even though I'm not operating in the same big scale as my employers, I do what I can with the possibilities I have, and then try to grow it from there. Reparel was based on my idea that we should be able to make better fabric. I have full respect for Betterman. I have full respect for everyone wanting to clean up after the textile industry. I think it's great. Myself, I try to focus on doing the least harm I can in the production process, and then obviously I have some ideas for post use of the garments. But for me, the interesting thing is trying to figure out what kind of material can we make which can make the least damage. Historically, I've been trying to make a yarn from PLA. PLA is synthetic, but organic based synthetics. I've actually failed doing that. I have tried different kinds of material. The first product I made together with a very, very famous Swedish fun park named Liseberg. We decided that we would make a sweatshirt with less microplastic shredding. So what we did, we replaced 70% of the material with tencel. Obviously, you will not have microplastic shredding from tencel since that's a cellulosic product, but you can get the same qualities from the jacket or the fleece, right? After that, we started looking for what kind of yarns are actually available in the market today, and what can we do with it. Our first setup was a customer in the west coast of Sweden, a really, really expensive and high-class resort who had the money to pay the prices of Swedish production. So we set up a production unit with knitting, coloring, garment making within 60 kilometers from each other here in Sweden. We made one collection, and it was very, very well received. We used the fleece fabric that we had developed together with Liseberg, and we used yarn from a Portuguese producer using ocean waste as a part of the material in the yarn. The ocean waste came from a company named Sequel, which is partly or fully owned by Antex, which is one of the big yarn producers in Europe. I'm mentioning this just so you can see that having the interest of documentation and traceability of the yarn have always been one of my interests. After the Swedish concept, we started to get requests from other companies, but not in the same price scale. So we needed to find another way of producing. Even though I would like to produce everything in Sweden, there is a capitalistic part in this. If no one will buy the things I have to find solutions to this. So at the moment, I can offer my customers production in Sweden and in Portugal. In Portugal, I have the same setup when the yarn, and at the moment we're using basically 3 types of yarn. It's Sequel from Barcelona, it's Tencel from Austria and Lenzing, and it's recycled car tires from Fulgar in Italy. Fulgur is using BASF pyrolysis oil in the production, so we have the traceability on that as well. When the yarn comes to Porto, we can go from yarn via knitting or weaving to garment making without moving the material more than 50 kilometers. So we're trying to have a really slim production setup, both because it's economically wise. The less you transport it, the more you can pay for the yarn and the more you can pay for the production, but also because it has to do with CO2 emissions, and it also has to do with control of the material. At the garment maker, to avoid overproduction, we do not have any garments in stock. What we have is fabric in stock, the most common fabric we have in stock. And we also have a very flexible garment maker who can make as little as 50 pieces, but also 5,000 pieces based on the material we have in stock. And then again, the delivery time for the products that we deliver to the corporate industry is approximately 4 weeks. It's much better than if you were going to order the fabric in China, ship it to Dhaka and so forth. But it's approximately 4 weeks more than all these China products produced on speculation being placed in storages in Scandinavia. So we have to to defend the fact that we are like 10 times as expensive as a lot of our competitors, and that we are 4 weeks slower than our competitors. We really have to work with the story, getting our customers to realize what we are doing, which is different from our colleagues or competitors or whatever, and we're hammering that story in the labels. I don't know if you can see my shirt. We have this slogan with "Wear Ocean Waste," and we also have the same slogan with "Wear Auto Waste" for the recycled tires. We tell people about the plastic in the ocean. We tell people about the graveyards of worn-out tires. When it comes to the delivery time, I mean, that's also about sustainability. I mean, if you want to be sustainable today, you need to learn how to plan ahead. That is true, or that's the topic. If you're going to take the bus, I mean, going by public transportation is more complicated. If you don't travel ahead, it's much easier to just use the car. I'm a middle-aged white man. If someone told me 6 years ago that when I was going from Gothenburg, which is the west coast of Sweden, to Stockholm, which is the capital of Sweden, it's approximately 500 kilometers. If someone had told me 5 years ago that I would accept that I had to stop in the middle, wait for 40 minutes while my car was charging, I would say, no way. I've got this 6-engine black car. It can go. I have approximately 100,000 kilometers in the tank. I can go back and forth 4 times without stopping. But then again, if you do that now, you will see that there is a lot of middle-aged white men in Hörby, which is somewhere in the middle, every morning waiting for the car to charge, and we're actually kind of proud of it. So there is an attitude, there is a change of attitude, even with guys like me, which is like middle-aged white men is like the most problematic group of people ever lived. But there is actually hope, and a lot of the people we work with, we actually, with explaining the plus sides of our products, with explaining and being very pedagogical, we are actually gaining ground regarding this. And then obviously we wouldn't be Reparel if we were happy just because we could make yarn from wood pulp, ocean waste, and recycled car tires. Obviously, that is not enough. I really believe in polymers. I think that you can do a lot of nice things with natural fiber, and there is different natural fiber. We've talked about the tencel, which is one of my favorites, and Loes can probably tell something about how the Forest Act of EU will affect that industry. For my sake, it's important to keep on developing. And when this supplier of mine, Sequel, haven't improved their product for 5 years, and when no one else is interested in doing that, the thing with Sequel is that to make yarn, you need rather long molecule chains. You need a viscosity for polyester yarn that will actually work with the yarn spinning machines, right? At the moment, there is approximately 20% ocean waste in the Sequel yarn that I buy, and 80% landfill, not PET, but landfill.
That's great.
For me, 20% after 5 years is not enough. So then I start Googling on the internet because I'm stupid and obviously don't want to earn any money, never. And then I figure out that, well, if the problem is that the generated plastic is, if I realize that the problem with recycling plastic is that the molecule chains are getting shorter. Well, how nice for me that actually BASF have got a liquid that you can blend with the bad plastic to make the molecule change long again and make bad plastic spinnable, so that you can put 40 or maybe 50 or hopefully 100% really bad plastic into the yarn. I believe that is the way we can take a responsibility. And the reason, do I have 2 more minutes or have I used my time?
We are at 19 minutes.
We're at 90 minutes. I'll just stop there. I'm sorry.
It's very no. Please conclude with your no. It's very interesting. Obviously, you are showing your from a manufacturer point of view how to be practically,
I'll just give the
example.
Just give the bizarre example, which kind of works with Betterman's efforts and also with the global perspective of it. Last summer, I got a call from a guy working for one of the important families in the Emirates. After they built the palm, I mean, they had one De Palm, and then they built one 10 times bigger. One of the important family have this problem. They are getting the prince is getting a lot of plastic debris on his mangrove farm. So his guy calls me and say, "Hey, you're the guy making clothes out of plastic. Would you please come down here and you can start picking the plastic and you can make some clothes of it, and we can give it to the visitors at COP28." I had to say to the guy, obviously I could, but I won't, because picking your plastic, flying it to Barcelona, shipping it to Porto, and then back again as clothes doesn't give any sense sustainable. But what I would like to do, I would like to try to find the recipe for making yarn from local waste, mixing it with the BASF thing, and then hopefully with the recipe we can be able to produce yarn from local waste all over the world, and hopefully in close proximity to textile factories. And that's pretty much what's my contribution to the sustainable debate. Everything else is small scale, but if it's possible to create trash to raw material again, I really want to be a part of it. I'm sorry for taking so long, but
no, that's so interesting, actually, because you were giving us a different prospect, a different, actually, it was very interesting. We should plan an episode ahead, just focusing on the manufacturers, work. Emil, thank you. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just want to say thank you. And
No,
please,
thank you
if you have
very
any
much.
questions, I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you very much, Emil. Thank you to everyone for being here today. If you have any question, please switch on your microphone and just, okay, we have Ian. Ian, can you please switch on the microphone so we can hear your question?
Can you hear me okay? Do you hear me?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
we do.
So,
Thank you.
I was particularly interested by the concept of speculative overproduction and how much that actually contributes overall to the waste. Because it seems to me that from an economical scale, clearly you have to overproduce, but many of these things will end up never having a life at all. They'll simply go straight to landfill. Do we have any data on this at all?
I think this question is for either Loes or Emil.
I don't know, Loes,
Where
if you want to take it. I've been a part of this, and we were speculative, counting on 20% overproduction. I've been shipping black plastic bags to Africa or to and I've also been a part of burning fully functional clothes. I mean, but no one, you will never have a lot of company admitting what they are doing. Maybe we'll have something on it, but I would say somewhere between 10 and 25% overproduction. I guess.
Okay, so Betterman, do you want to join as well? In terms of data, do we have companies who are actually, or loose, that are actually clear on the data? Can we access data or not?
I mean, to me, that seems the most wasteful of wasteful. The fact that it's produced and then not even used and then immediately discarded.
Yeah, exactly. And that's one big part of the problem of the issue. So altogether, we should stop the overproduction. So we should stop the culture, first of all, the buy culture. And also, Dr. LeeAnn, do you want to take the, okay.
To respond to Ian and to just kind of share this, the overproduction is part of the baked-in business plan of fast fashion. Period. Does that make sense? For sure.
You have to respond quickly to an order. This is clear. So an order comes in, you have to be able to fulfill it immediately or business doesn't happen.
That's not what I meant. Actually, a large part of the fast fashion production business model is to overproduce because they know that there's a consumptive audience and they don't really care about the circularity aspect of it. So ultimately, it's a baked in given that there is overproduction. Think about it, Ian. If you have one particular brand, one brand only, this isn't, all brands. This is one brand producing over 1 million orders a day. It's got to go somewhere.
Right.
I think I can contribute with this. Let's have the idea that when you have your ready-made garment in Dhaka, you put it in the container in Chittagong. Well, what you have paid so far is $30 US. $30 US is the complete price with work in garments and garment making or whatever. After 6 months at sea, You open the container in Scandinavia and you can sell this item for $300. If you have this 10 times profit on it, you will have a sound business. Even though you have to throw away 25% of it, you will still make money. The problem with the textile industry working in low-cost countries today is that the margins are so sensational that you can afford to do it. If you compare with my setup in Porto, where Portuguese middle-aged women who are real seamstresses and have a life and live in a house and have kids and stuff, my products are so expensive that I can't afford to throw away that amount. So that's kind of forcing me or my setup to be sustainable. But I think that the incredible profits or margins in the fast fashion industry is one of the drivers for this.
Yes, yeah, exactly. No, thank you very much. Good insight.
Thank you, Ian, and thank you all for being here today. Do we have any further question for the debate? Anyone else? Yes.
Hi. I make from rescue only, from used and rescue only, from the existing. And I've learned through this almost 9 years of creating the possibilities that we hold as human beings, the accountability, the intent we have behind that which we are producing and making. I find it very hard to deal with the fact that these countries are drowning in that which we are producing solely for benefit of the economy before ecology. I find it heartbreaking. And I work with these pieces because they're worthy and they deserve being rescued and saved and revalued rightly, as does all of nature and ecology. So I struggle greatly with so much of this, as I'm sure we all do. It's very upsetting to understand that tipping points are tipping. And we are at the 1.5 degree mark, and we're still sitting here talking about, ways of overproducing to serve ecology before nature. I don't understand that, because I know within 9 years of building what we can do with our existing. It's very, very important to reshape a new mentality within humanity, not just corporate industry, across the board for humanity, and deal with these issues accordingly. Go to these places and start working with them. I have a patent. I have over 50 designs that are mass producible by stacking multiples in holes to cut back on the wasting, to cut back on the shredding. I don't have to shred. I don't have to buy new fabrication. I go and I rescue and I revalue, and these pieces become these magical art fashion pieces that give this energy, that give this feeling about them to whoever's wearing them. And they're mass wearable by others. It's magical. And it all comes from artistry of considerate choosing. And that's not something just for the fashion industry. This is something across the board for everybody to be practicing daily, individually, in corporate industry. It makes no difference. We were put here on earth. We were given the power to choose individually. It's a powerful thing. And we have to choose considerately for others. In Okimi's case, my case, for the planet, before my own creative making. When you do that consistently, you set yourself on a path of just endless creative making. I mean, it just pours out of me. It's a language of sustainability. So I have some designs that I can take, I feel 30 to 50 crap polymer shirts and reconvert it into a usable piece. Maybe not fashion, maybe for the home. We have to be flex. We have to think outside the box. We have to change and innovate, all sustainably for the planet before everything. We have to start holding people accountable for their choices. Let them know that we see them. And so for me, it's very difficult to not come up with solutions when they're there. because I'm creating them. So if I can do it, I can't imagine what the pros could be doing. But no one's knocking on my door saying, what can you do to help us with all of this excess? What can you do with all this dead stock? Because I can whip it around in a second. But where are they? But yet this industry wants to change. I don't see it. I don't see it. And we need a solution.
We need solution, and thank you for your witnessing. It's just really amazing what you just explained to us. I think it's a matter of culture, Simi. We need to change, first of all, the Western culture, where we think everything is easy, it's affordable, and we can grab. We see something, oh, I'll go and grab it. Oh, I'll see another thing, okay, I'll go and grab it. No, I don't want it anymore. Let me, just dump it. So we need to change the culture. First of all, we do not need that much, and we need to be more conscious buyers. So as Emil was explaining to him, in terms of production, it costs him 10 times more, that if he wants to go for an unethical choice. But we need to buy less. We need to produce less, and we need to change this culture, which is infectious. And the other day, and I will give you more space as well. I'd like to, after this meeting, to have a chat with you. The other day, I was watching a documentary, and then I will close because we already out of time. But I was watching a documentary. I had to stop watching this documentary. It was filmed in Dhaka, in Bangladesh. It was horrific. Kids, 7 years old, deprived of their life, working like slaves for items that then are sold in glamorous shops in Europe, from H&M, Zara. I mean, it's horrible what I've seen. I couldn't watch it any longer. And the condition that these people, they live in these slums full of, toxic everywhere. It's just horrible condition. So and I will close now. If we are in the 21st century, we still have people living in this like slaves and in this horrible condition, then, my dear friends, I can tell you that we have failed. As a society, as a civilized society, we have failed. Because we can't allow, a kid of 6, 7 years old working like a slave, 12 hours per day. You should be at school. And depriving these people of their life just because they had the misfortune of being born in Bangladesh or, somewhere else. So I agree with you, Simi, and thank you very much to every one of you. You've been wonderful today. So let's leave the conversation unless there are any other questions from Helga, Gabriel, Mette. No. Helga, turn on the microphone, please. Helga, we can't hear you. You need to switch on the microphone.
Can you hear me? Yes.
Yes, we can. Yes.
To address Dr. LeeAnn Teal Rutkovsky, she mentioned just at the beginning of her presentation the company Shein. And what is interesting, for example, they wanted to be listed on the London Stock Exchange, because already beforehand, New York, I think they have rejected them because they were so unsustainable, and there was such a contest, protestations against them. And now they have the problem even on the London Stock Exchange. Of course, they want to have it, but then it's so unsustainable. Amnesty International, so many organizations are complaining about them. So either they change or maybe they improve a little bit their business model, or maybe they can't be listed. So that means public pressure can still achieve something, and where it hurts so much when it comes to money. But I think Dr. LeeAnn, she knows more about the company and why the New York Stock Exchange has rejected it. But that is also interesting, that global an outcry against the company can also achieve something. And the last thing I just want to say, because I'm now in Germany, in Berlin, and next week there will be the Berlin Fashion Week from the 1st to the 4th of July, and they have a big program on sustainability. But then we have to see afterwards what has happened. That's all. Thank you
That's
so much.
very interesting. Thank you, Helga. And you are absolutely right. We need to put public pressure on these nasty, horrible brands. I think shame on Shein. They they are not allowed to exist. 1 million orders per day. It's diabolical. So sorry, LeeAnn. Dr. LeeAnn, we can't hear you.
I just wanted to mention the tactic or the strategy from the U.S. side for the launch of the IPO here. I was very involved in doing research for
I didn't know.
effort, but the key is that they didn't focus on multiple things. We focused on the Uyghur labor, so the slavery issues associated with the Shein's production practices. So that was the one thing that they were focusing on, and it was an interesting lesson for me, even though for me it went far beyond that. They chose to just focus on this one particular strategy. In the end, it has worked thus far.
Okay.
But they, of course, they're in London, and London is thrilled. If you're following the literature there, they're just happy as clams over this. So I'm just astounded that they're even entertaining it. But
yeah,
it actually has a positive. Loes, you know better than I do, but it does have. It appears to have a very positive reaction. They're out of their freaking mind.
No, absolutely. But I think that's what we need to do. Helga, as usual, she nailed it. We need to put public pressure. So, and next week, Helga, try to be our filming crew in Berlin.
Okay.
You can, and I'll try to join you in Berlin if I may, if I can. I will try to join you in Berlin, but we will discuss this later, and maybe we can have a special podcast from Berlin. Mette, thank you very much for joining us today. Mette is a former member of the Danish Parliament, and I hope that we can host her in the future with future episodes. The next episode, so she can give us the insight from a government point of view in Denmark on how to be more sustainable and how the country is reacting to new regulation and law, and also how the Danish people, the attitude of Danish people towards fast fashion or ethical fashion.
I would love to do that. Thank you very much.
Unfortunately,
I don't have I don't have anything positive to share about that, because what the Danish government are doing isn't actually, I wouldn't call them a role model, to put it mildly, but I can certainly talk about that. And I would love to be in the next episode, and I can share more of my knowledge about how we do it in Denmark. I'm sure the intentions are good, but we need more work, as you've said in this podcast as well.
And Mette,
thank you, Mette. Thank you.
Very humble human being. She was also actually the equivalent. She was knighted in the Danish Parliament. So she.
Oh wow.
Yeah. She's just amazing.
Yes, but I would love to host also Simi. We can discuss this opportunity. I would love to showcase your work and to go more in depth with what you're doing. I mean, I would love to host all of you always. What we can do, we can structure the next episode. And I'm also officially inviting Ian Sparks to be a speaker in one of our next episodes. I know he can be a great challenger, and he can share his insights as well. And he's a strategist and a man that always finds solutions to the most difficult issues. So, Ian, if you're there, hello.
Yes.
I would love to invite you as a keynote speaker in one of the next episodes.
Yes. Yeah, of course, I'll do my best. It's not my field, but maybe I can apply my mind to it as well.
Well, for your information, Ian is a great strategist. Is an internet. He's also an architect, and I mean, he's fantastic. He's a great personality, and I'm sure he can contribute as well. Well, dear guests, what else? It's been a terrific panel. I learned a lot from you all today, and we need to work a lot. There is a lot of work to do, but the world is at stakes. But moreover, the lives of many people, millions of kids around the world is at stakes. And believe it or not, it's shocking. These kids in Bangladesh, they don't reach the age of 50. By the age of 50, they're already dead. So I had to stop watching this documentary. But anyway, we are here to discuss the issue, the problem, changing our mentality, and putting public pressure, using Helga phrase, and finding solutions and strategies. So thank you all. And please download the book of Dr. LeeAnn. I already read it. It's wonderful. It's absolutely beautiful. And we will organize, the next episode will be in September. I will discuss this with Mette, Simi, and all of you. If you want to take part, please, let's get in, let's regroup after in the next few days. And we also have Nina.
We appears on that cover with her testimony.
Fantastic.
Thank you, darling.
Thank you, my dear. I've already seen it. Thank you very much. Thank you. And we also have Nina Gabor joining us. She's a public figure from Australia. She's always in the news, and she's a campaigner, and she's also, like you all, very straightforward, and she's also pursuing the truth and transparency. Thank you very much, dear all. It's been a terrific pleasure. I will get in touch with all of you individually. And what else can I say? Let's finish with our Rebel, which is our soundtrack. And thank you very much for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye.